Hello everyone. Today we have another segment working with ColourArte products. I've done a little bit something different that you guys haven't seen me do for a few months. I've taken a tile, applied a alcohol wash effect with the Rezin Arte Tints, sealed it with a varnish barrier. That's kind of one of the things I wanted to cover with you guys here on camera. When you're working with solvent, like the alcohol ink or an alcohol ink, or say you're going to make our Rezin Arte Tints behave like an alcohol, you need a water-soluble barrier between that in order to put a solvent barrier on top. You don't want the two reconstituting each other, okay? As we did in that other tile in that last segment, I took a pre-resin tile with some sample color, the Surf's Up and the Antique Rose Gold, and it was pretty cool. Only two colors, that red raspberry and the turmeric, were dropped on top, and yet we saw violets and purples and all of these colors. And the reason why is you're dealing in transparencies, and because the Rezin Arte tints are transparent, you could see the color beneath them. Well, we're going to get the same effect on this next piece coming up, only I'm putting the tints on the bottom with a varnish barrier and then hand painting with the primary elements and our vivid acrylic enamel. I can hear a few people go, yay, she's going to actually start using the primary elements. Yeah, I've been on a resin journey lately since making the resin colors. But I use the primary elements mixed in the vivid enamel. You're going to see me use a Scotia pouring medium. This is not because we're making a paint pouring mix out of this. It's because the vivid enamel is very viscous. It's very thick. Some people have said it's almost like mayonnaise. Well, if you're doing dimensional artwork, that's cool because the enamel dries with a little bit of a dome or a little bit of a dimension. But if I want to do brush painting or any kind of stippling, I wanted it to flow a little bit more like a regular paint. So I added a Scotia the pouring medium and mixed it up so I could brush paint and then stipple. And if you guys have not heard the term stipple before, sorry for getting my brush, is you want something flat. And this one actually has a lot of body to it. It's kind of fluffy. And the stippling motion is actually pouncing the color on. It creates texture, and you're not getting stuck with, do I like this brush stroke? Do I not like this brush stroke? Some of the base, I brushed some of the ginger peach over the bottom of the brush, but from that point on, I was stippling another color, letting it dry, stippling another color, letting it dry, because when you work with acrylics, you build them in layers. And the cool part is, even though I only used basically a yellow orange and two browns, you got all this wonderful green coming through, which really was cool for the turtle. Okay, it kind of fit with what the turtle theme thought was. So there's a little heads up for that. I also want to say that we're switching the jar really quickly, a little promo here on the small sampler size primary element. A few years ago, we went to a little sifter sieve shaker jar to make it easy for the scrapbookers. That was the demographic at the time, who were liking to shake the pigments through a stencil for effects. Well, then the paint pouring community discovered us in May 2017, and they're like, I have to pull this plug out. Yeah. So now we've got it. We beefed it up from 1/3 of an ounce to a 1/2 ounce. It's a wide mouth jar. You'll be able to get your spoon in it. No extra charge. We're not charging extra for giving you 50% more. And you'll see in the video how I used it. I hope you guys enjoy this piece. I really enjoyed making it. And here's one other little thing. A lot of people have asked me about tiles. What I keep envisioning is maybe a custom tile strip around your shower, or maybe one of those walk-in showers that can hold 2 people. One entire wall is painted because once you put resin on top, it's waterproof. Well, this turtle, I could see 3 really cool turtles 10 by 14 tiles mounted on the back wall of a great bathroom for my kid right over the bathtub, or my grandkid at this point. Anyway, I enjoyed this project. I hope you enjoy this project, and I will see you next time.
So the first thing to get started with is I'm taking a little bit of some Rezin Arte Tints, mixing them with about a half ounce of 99% alcohol. Let them mix well and pour off the excess, but I'm throwing the sediment in the bottom of the cup away. I don't really want the sediment. They're mixed in a mineral carrier so you can make a tint for your resin. I'm going to lubricate my 10 by 14 tile with some 99% alcohol. And you'll see me use this technique all the way through. A drop of 99% pure and some of the color. A drop of 99% pure and some of the color. I have a piece of blue hose that I cut long enough so I can sit up comfortably and not be bending over the table with a straw. I don't own an airbrush, so this was a great fix for me. That is the pretty peridot. There is a lot of yellow in that color. I'm sorry, peridot, not pretty peridot, peridot. A lot of yellow in that color. So I opted to use that minimally. Didn't use very much of the peridot in my piece, just a little bit. The blue is the Bahama Mama, and that turquoise color is Caribbean Sea. See, I'm dropping more of the alcohol to try to soften the edges and not add more color. I'm looking for a wash effect to go behind my main image. Now, what's very interesting about the tints is when we did our last piece, we had a 6 by 6 that I had resined with, I think it was Surf's Up Blue and the Antique Rose Gold. And when I dropped two colors, only two colors over it, the hibiscus and the turmeric, it didn't run the colors below. Remember, they're resined, it's already cured. But because of the transparency of the tints, it gave the illusion when the red raspberry went over that blue, it was making purple. That's the coolest thing about working with transparencies. As long as you put good layering between them, as we are in this piece, we're going to end up doing a varnish barrier between this alcohol effect base and the next layer, because I do plan on resining it, and the last thing I want is for the resin to move or lift this alcohol effect. And the resin is alcohol soluble, just so you know. You clean up your hands with alcohol, you spray things down with alcohol when you're cleaning it up. So of course it would disturb something that I've used as alcohol as the carrier to move it around on the tile. There's a little residue left in my batch of peridot because they were the first batch runs. Our very first batch of the tints, we used a heavier mineral. The second batch runs, which we're selling now, um, work with the color a little bit better. It releases it so you can get it into the resin a little bit easier. But when making a dry tint, I had to have some kind of carrier to deliver the color to your resin or to be able to put it in alcohol. Okay, so now we're ready to do the varnish. This is Liquitex Super Varnish. I'm trying really hard to not even touch the tile. In hindsight, I wished I had dipped it, and I will be dipping the next one, and I'll show you what I mean by that, guys, next time. Because if you dip something in the varnish and let it drip, it's so paper thin, it comes out like glass. And in this, I was trying desperately to get the color on without disturbing the alcoholing or the alcohol effect below, because alcohol is not a binder. If I had just pushed down at all, I could have rubbed all that color down. It does look a little milky right now, but it will dry crystal clear in a couple hours. I'm drying it with cool air in my gun. Do not use heat. You never want to cook your paint, not acrylic paints. Okay, so now we're going to transfer our design. Now, this next image coming up is something you guys probably wouldn't think of me with painting, but those are some roses I painted with our twinkling H2Os. However, I didn't draw those. That design came from a pattern from Carolyn Holman, and they'll when you get these patterns, you'll get a black and white photo. This was a hibiscus from a hibiscus class I took. I couldn't find the rose one to show you in the video. But what you do is you tape it down, and then you put wax-free carbon paper sandwiched in between your image on top and your watercolor paper below. Tape it down with painter's tape, and then just use a mechanical pencil to transfer the pattern to the paper below or your surface below, and it's just like you drew it on. Okay, now I've got my turtle design. I drew this turtle to scale. I worked all morning this morning drawing my turtle. I have a turtle crush. Now, if you get a new piece of this wax-free carbon, I encourage you to rough it up to start with, rub them together, and then wipe off all the excess before you start. I've had this piece of carbon paper since 2005. The older the better, because you just want it to transfer the image for you. So I started with my mechanical pencil, and right at the beginning I said, wait a minute, my image isn't coming through. It's not pressing down hard enough. So I'm using a stylus tool. Now, a stylus tool, you have to be careful. I'm getting my image to come through, but you've got to be careful on the top to keep track of where you've been and where you still have to go. With a pencil or a pencil in another color, you'll be able to see the second area that you've traced over the top. With the stylus, you just kind of have to keep remembering where you've been and then lift up and check it every once in a while. Make sure it went through. So I'm leaving the paper on, but I've got enough of a design. See how my paper is just folded over on the top? I'm leaving enough of it. I've got enough design on there, and I'm using my Posca white acrylic liner pens to outline this entire design of my turtle. What I like about the turtles, I've had a recent crush on them lately, is their design lends themselves to simple, easy patterns. And I've been thinking about, could I do a cool opal effect on the back of the tortoiseshell with resin sometime? But I really wanted to get this design drawn out. I like how thick the lines can be. All turtles, most of these turtles have these similar patterns, but none of them are exactly the same. So you can have your own unique design or imperfection or perfection, depending upon how you look at it. And it looks realistic. I can even fatten up my lines a little bit there and not worry about if I'm drawing nice and paper thin. I don't have to be a fantastic artist to do this because the turtle actually has thicker veining there in that tortoise shell and kind of thick lines around their little fins. I just love the image to play with. Okay, I'm filling in the sections that are going to be around where the dots on his head are. And hopefully at this point, he's going to start taking shape for you guys. Okay, so at this point, I'm confident of my pattern. I've pulled my design off the top, the tape off. I'm just going over and make sure all my designs are clean and try hard not to sketch. I have a tendency to sketch. You want your lines smooth, not broken. So when I drew my piece, I didn't finish all the patterns in his tail. I mean, in his tail, in his fin there. So you will see me eventually just kind of manually draw different shapes in there to make up the rest of his fin. Okay, now it's time to mix up some of our primary elements with the vivid ultrametallic, I mean with the vivid enamel and a little bit of pouring medium. And the pouring medium is simply about a half a teaspoon to get the paint to flow. It is not that we are making paint pouring color. So there's about an ounce of the vivid enamel or about a half ounce in each one of those cups. I did make up a blender mixed of the interference red and some clear, but here you see me mixing the ginger peach, very, very bright in your face yellow orange. I'm going to add a little bit more, I think, pouring medium here just to kind of get it to flow. And now I can paint with it like brush painting. And here's my colors. Okay, I'm apologizing right here at this point. You see that stippling motion? I want you to see that stipple motion. I did not realize the camera is off when I painted the head and the fins. Um, I'm adding a little bit of the playful peony, and even with a regular paintbrush, you can do an up and down motion like a stippling effect for texture. But along the neck, you can see where I stippled the autumn leaf brown. What's very interesting is the Resin Art Tints and the transparency of our paint on top gives the illusion that I painted greens in there, that I added some green color to his skin under the neck and in the tail, and I did not. That's the color of the tints coming through. On the first part, I did hand detail all those little dark sections on that big fin with chestnut brown on the base, a little bit of autumn leaf above it. And as I got going, I was trying to be very careful to color in each one of those little sections. I said, wait a minute, I don't need to do that. I'm going to go over the top with my white Posca pen anyway. So when I got to the little fin, I just took a paintbrush and brushed a little bit of the ginger peach and a little bit of the autumn leaf. You'll see the area that looks a little bit browner is the autumn leaf, and the ginger peach gives you that transparent green orange look. Ginger peach is very, very transparent. As you can see, I'm just touching up the lines that were there before. That's why I wasn't worried. I said, wait a minute, it doesn't matter if I'm going over the top of those little lines, those little patterns. I'm going to touch them up anyway with a pen. Make it easy. It's amazing how crisp the pattern becomes when you draw with that white Posca pen on top. It just seems to bring it together. Okay, I think it's time for me to start painting again where you can actually see me paint on the shell. First, I tested a little bit of the Playful Peony there. That's that color I used in the head. I wasn't so sure about using it there, so I opted for Ginger Peach. You see how transparent that is and how that blue underneath is becoming that really pretty emerald green. Now this is a little bit of clear mixed with some interference red so I could move the colors around and get some light and dark with just that one color. A little bit more ginger peach. Oops, I had a little dribble there. Now I'm stippling with it. I laid down the brush stroke, let it dry a little bit. Now I'm adding more ginger peach in a stippling motion to create a pattern and texture. I love that webbing look that we're getting. I love that texture that's popping up. And by the way, it'll be beautiful under resin, or if you choose to just dip this with varnish on the top or paint varnish on the top, that would be gorgeous too. But remember, if you do a resin top coat, you can use it as you would like tile in a bathroom or a garden area or because it'll be waterproof. I'm using cool air just to dry it so I can stipple the next color on top. Okay, this next color I'm stippling is Autumn Leaf. That's our very wonderful orangey autumn brown. If you notice, I'm avoiding that there's a little section that kind of goes under their shell that still has a pattern. I'm going to leave that lighter. And right now we're going to work on the actual back side of the shell. It might be hard to see because I have to do my Posca pin, but that's why I'm focusing on that one section on that one side. I believe this is some chestnut brown. It could be another layer of autumn leaf. Autumn leaf on top of autumn leaf would give you darker brown, but I know at one point I picked up yeah, this looks like autumn leaf, but at one point I just picked up a daub of the chestnut brown. It's amazing when you get to layer three how much darker that looks. I'm touching up the ginger peach along that little side area. Okay, now I'm going to touch up the shell again. If you want to soften that white, see, going over it with resin automatically softens the white subtly. Even varnish will do it. You can take a little bit of interference red, mix it with a tiny, tiny bit of, say, the ginger peach just to create a sandy color if the white bothers you. Personally, it didn't me at all. I felt the other colors were coming through and it looked very natural, especially when I got it resined. So it's time to touch up my little guy's eye. I've just got a little tiny bit of carbon black from golden to darken up his eye. Just tiny few drops in the bottom of a cup and a paintbrush. That's all I needed. Okay, so here's about, I'd say I used an ounce and a half of resin, the 2 ounces of resin. Warm it slightly, spread it out. You're done. I've been thinking about a possible third layer on the back where that shell is, but this is a great project anybody can do, even with varnish. I want to give everybody a chance to see the possibilities. And maybe people that work with acrylic paint might see the benefits of playing with the Rezin Arte Tints if they can get some alcohol effects with it. We're not limited to just resin. Coming up here will be a close-up. I really enjoy being with you guys, so you have a good day and stay tuned for the close-up on my camera.
So here's a close-up of the turtle wing under the resin, the primary elements. There's a different kind of shimmer under the resin with our primary element colors. Up here in the neck, you can see the stippling. See how I'm layering the color on top of the color? I do get little bits of coral in that head. It's a tiny bit of that playful peony in there. Here's part of our little wing, our little paddle fin on top. Now here's where I'm thinking I may add something, I may leave it alone. The back of the turtle sometimes has a different pattern on it, and it leaves this open for possibly doing some kind of resin droplet technique on top of this at a later date. I am loving how this looks though. So there you have it. And a quick little advertisement, let you guys know that the primary elements now, our new sampler jar is this 1/2 ounce. We have stepped away from the little 10 ml shaker jar because it's not really good for, it's not relevant for the paint pouring people. Very generous amount for 1/2 ounce, and this is the vivid clear enamel that was used in the video. Hope you guys enjoy. Thanks. Bye-bye.